Hey, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Jeff Ledbetter here from the DATAMARK team. Glad to be a part of this URISA LEAP conference. Been a part of the organizing committee since it started up, and just really excited that we've been able to bring together a lot of great content and for a great audience here. And DATAMARK is pleased to be a sponsor of this event. And we hope that everyone will enjoy it. I do want to take the time that I've got here for the next 20 minutes to talk a little bit about a partnership that we have with a company called the Critical Response Group. I'm also going to tell you about another educational opportunity, a virtual conference coming up in March that we at the DATAMARK team are putting together. I want to make sure that everybody knows about it as well before we get done with our time. So I want to jump right into this idea of planning to respond and responding to the plan. You know, indoor mapping is kind of a hot topic these days around public safety circles and GIS, at the intersection of GIS. What does GIS have to do with creating pre-response plans or the internal mapping, indoor mapping? Of course, software vendors, Esri and others, are putting solutions out there that are about indoor mapping that are really focused at a facility management group audience, that are really focused on wayfinding and other things like that that are sort of tangential to public safety. But indoor mapping is kind of a discussion that requires context. And so what I really want to focus on here is really more about response plans that include but use indoor mapping, but provide much more. Oops. There we go. So the idea of planning to respond is one where you have a response plan, a graphic, a document, a piece of paper is most first responders would prefer. It's a discussion and a battle that I've fought in many previous roles before. Why would you prefer a piece of paper when you could have this great digital thing? Of course, connectivity is not always reliable, but a piece of paper is. So more than indoor mapping, these pre-response plans are intended to flatten communication. They do so by always having north up so that it's predictable and the building is aligned with that orthogonal north. It's intended to flatten communication by providing a grid overlay system that gives everyone a common language about that cafeteria, which happens to be in D4 of the critical response graphic. It does so also by giving site-specific labeling, because it requires a person to walk the site and identify the critical functions and features. Where are the electrical panels, the gas shutoffs, the firefighting equipment inside, the alarms and other things, alarm panels. And they do so on an accurate floor plan. You know, one of the biggest problems with a lot of indoor mapping is that if you're not verifying the floor plan, you're very likely creating inaccurate and incomplete floor plans. And if we overlay that on up-to-date aerial imagery, it all of a sudden connects the context of the outside to the context of the indoors. You know, the great innovation here really is in that tactical mindset or the response mindset that would collect the data. We've partnered with the folks at CRG, Critical Response Group, for just this reason. They're a group of former special operations veterans that learned in their careers the value of having these flat communication pieces to help them find their ways and find their targets and objectives and get the information that they need. Here's a picture of a Navy SEAL, Rob O'Neill, who's part of the team over at CRG, wearing one of those plans. Another picture over here where one of these gridded reference graphics was used in the Bin Laden raid. They developed this approach of taking plans out of binders and off shelves and making them useful documents that can be used in the field in response. Taking floor plans that at best are like this one, fresh and fairly new, CAD, computer-aided design based, but come from a variety of forms. They come from printed, digital, inside binders, on CDs, local hard drives, removable hard drives. One of my first jobs out of college was at a facility management department of a large institution, and we had all sorts of different formats and things for our plans, of all sorts of digital formats as well as hard copy formats. And that's a challenge to bring all those things together to create a useful indoor map. And they all come in different conditions, as you can see in the middle as well. But what CRG has really done is created an innovative approach to create the response graphic. When we got together with CRG, though, we helped them understand the difference between information that's in the graphic and data, the usefulness of data. These geospatial PDF outputs and raster format outputs were interesting. They were useful for many things, but when you make the move to GIS data, all of a sudden, many things become possible. So I want to take you through this plan again, and the product. As you see, again, north is always up to flatten communication with a common grid, and allow first responders or anybody else to quickly find room 260 at Anywhere Elementary School in Anytown, New Jersey, very quickly by simply opening this up and going to grid F4, finding we're going to all approach by door B, which is in grid 2E, and we're going to move down to room 260, which is proceeding to grid F4. It's a great communication format. The great thing about this is that the usefulness of these pre-response plans have been proven valuable in many, unfortunately, school shootings or other types of response scenarios. This has led 8+ states to create laws, regulation, requirements, some funded, some not funded, on school districts and other law enforcement coordination centers to not only create indoor maps of buildings, but to create pre-response plans of schools, of stadiums, of the water treatment plant, and other critical infrastructure. It's an important term by the Department of Homeland Security. These requirements are not going to be limited to only 8 states very soon. More and more states are considering this, and it will become will become an interesting requirement in many places with some variations. But the important part of the innovation here is the approach to collecting the data in whatever format you have, and then correcting the data with on-site inspections, on-site verification of all the things necessary in order to create the critical response graphic. The DATAMARK contribution to the partnership, though, is where information becomes data, and data can be disseminated to end users in a myriad of ways, to first responders, administrators, and others via web maps and apps. It provides the ability to support common operating pictures in 911 centers and emergency operations centers. They have a partnership with Rapid SOS already, where if there is a CRG plan in place, it will show up in the Rapid SOS mapping portal. They have other partnerships with school security system and video management systems that allow for those plans to be in place, even laid over live video feeds. And it certainly they can be integrated into first responder CAD systems, computer-aided dispatch systems as well. When I worked in San Diego, all the fire departments had pre-response plans tied to geo-verified locations. When a location geo-verified, the additional information button popped up, the fire captain tapped that button and got a PDF that was very useful. And there's so many, a myriad of other apps that can consume both GIS data, as well as the PDF or raster formats that can be put out from these response graphics. So it's more than indoor mapping, but it is a plan to respond. And then there is, for the GIS professional, the response to the plan. Response-minded data collection provides that innovative approach, and the integration into existing platforms, because of the ability to have that vector-based GIS data for web maps and apps, is very useful. It's an exciting offering that we added to our list of offerings here at DATAMARK, and working closely with our partners at CRG, that we want to make everybody aware of as something to know that we do. I'm also excited to talk about DATAMARK Orbit. It's our third annual Public Safety GIS conference. It's a virtual conference that'll be happening March 22nd to 24th. The important thing about it is that we want this to be it is not a marketing conference for DATAMARK, but rather it is another opportunity for the public safety GIS spheres and overlays between those two to come together, to educate one another, to advocate for solutions, and to innovate ideas about how we can work together to push next generation 911 forward, to push pre-response planning, to push common operating pictures, and all the other things that GIS technology can do for public safety. This will be a 3-day virtual experience that hopefully many of you have attended in the past, and will know that we have many good informational presentations. To that end, we actually really want to get a lot of participation. So we put out a call for papers for this virtual conference. We're pleased to announce that anybody who has a compelling story can tell it at the DATAMARK Orbit virtual conference. Session tracks will include operations, which will be more telecommunicator focused, technical, to include call handling equipment, GIS, land mobile radio, CAD, or records management systems. Leadership, which will focus on management, supervision, quality assurance, and self-care. And emerging technologies, things like networks, IoT, cybersecurity, indoor mapping, and unmanned aerial systems. Take a second to jot down the short URL here, bit.ly/DMO Orbit. Make your submissions by February 1st, which is, well, I guess that's today, isn't it? But make your submissions if you can get to the form. If you can't, please reach out to me. I can help you get that suggestion in over the next week or two if you come up with an idea, because we really want to have a good broad audience, a good broad base of presentations for the audience. In addition to that, we're also announcing an incentive to sign up and join our virtual conference. If you're planning to become a GISP or an ENP in 2022, we will be actually giving away the test fees and certification costs for both of those certifications. So if you're planning to test for GISP or you're planning to test for ENP, come join the DATAMARK Orbit virtual conference, and one of the random prizes will be the test fees and certification costs for the winners. Submission deadline is March 22nd, and again, that bit.ly/2022 DM Orbit short URL will get you there to register and indicate that you are attempting to test for GISP or ENP. So just a few key dates here. Call for paper deadline, as I said, is today. You can still get it in. And like I said, if you can reach out to me, Jeff Ledbetter at mbakerinTL.com. If you have any trouble with that, let me know. Or if you have an idea later this week, let me know. February 15th, we'll have the tracks announced and registrants can select their sessions. March 22nd, the PSAP nomination. We're also giving a prize to a PSAP that can tell us a good story about their heroics. And we'll have conference opening day on March 22nd with presentations 24th. So I'm really glad that I had a few minutes to talk with you today. Really glad that we've had the opportunity to be a part of organizing this conference. I'm really excited to see all the other great presenters and presentations and the information that we'll learn. So thank you to URISA, thank you to the organizing committee, and I'll turn it back over to Matt.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Have a few minutes to catch up before we transition over to our next sponsor showcase at the bottom of the hour. So we do want to thank DATAMARK and Geocom for being our two overall sponsors, and also the assistance of our supporting partners, Dewberry, Vestra, Google Maps, Tuku, and Spatial Focus. We'll be hearing from our supporting partners tomorrow during some lightning talks that we will have queued up. So the game plan for the rest of the morning is we'll have another sponsor showcase presentation, and then we will be wrapping up before our midday break with a session called Getting Organized, Models and Standards that Martha Wells and Ed Wells will be presenting on. So something to look forward to. There's been some really interesting conversations going on in chat. A lot of discussion about roundabouts and diverging diamonds. There are a few of those that are starting to pop up, and from personal experience, I can tell you that the day after our construction stopped and that opened in the locality I was working for, we got all the GIS folks together in front of the big screen and figuring out how to model that. We probably should have spent some time working that out and figuring that out but before that opened. But is definitely a challenge to make sure that it's drawn in a way that supports all the different needs for all the different systems. And that's a really great point that some of our other presenters talked about in terms of GIS data. We really want one version of the truth for address points and road center lines, because of all the effort and all the work that we take to maintain it and have those logical, geometric and attribute consistencies worked with it, and have confidence in that quality control. But then we ask so many different things of it for all these different systems, for all these different needs. And we also need to make sure that how we spell things, or how we parse street name elements out, or how we abbreviate them or not, also supports all of those downstream needs. And so sometimes these wrinkles, like diverging diamonds or roundabouts, or some of the special different requirements that are sometimes introduced, becomes a little bit more of a challenge. To make sure that as we're bringing new systems on board, we're not breaking other systems, we're not breaking other functionality for those. One of the things that was talked about a little bit in a couple of the different presentations was ETL, or extract, transform, and load. URISA's Next Generation 911 Task Force actually did a really good, I'll say really good, opinions may vary, recorded webinar that we can find on the URISA NG 911 Task Force webpage that talks about the principles of ETL with some demonstration and application of some strategies of how that works, particular to the NENA Next Generation 911 data model. And so if I'll find the link for that, get that in there, if that's something of interest to you, or if you may see that as a possible solution or a tool to pull out of your toolbox as you're facing and dealing with some of these challenges of asking our data to do so many different things and supporting so many different systems. It's a great problem for GIS folks to have, but it's also a skill set that we know is usually learned on the job. Isn't part of a lot of GIS courses or GIS curriculum, which is also why URISA and the folks coming together to organize the LEAP conference or working on the NG 911 task force find it important to find ways to help each other out, provide resources, provide education about some of these challenges and other strategies and other tools. No matter where you're at in your career, you know, we're always coming up with new challenges. If it's new systems or roundabouts or divergent diamonds, oh my, there are all sorts of other things that can wind up in there too.